Let's talk Utah Jazz basketball.
You're casual.
We are casuals, as it was so succinctly pointed out in the YouTube comments yesterday. I don't mind talking about the Jazz on a daily basis. I mean, it is what a lot of people come to the show for. We like to meet that expectation. But the one thing that I think you can count on us for is that we are not going to sugarcoat our comments. And I think some people would like us to, hey, can you shine some bright sunshine on the Jazz? Nope. We tell the truth on this show. And the truth right now is Quin Snyder has a choice to make. Do you play the young guys and try to develop them and bring them up and hope that they can help you win games now, knowing they'll be able to help you in the future? Or do you continue to play veterans like Rudy Gay and Danuel House and hope that they can win now because they won't be part of the future? It is a real conundrum for Quin Snyder and this Utah Jazz organization. I'm telling you now, there's only one guy you need to worry about, and that's Jared Butler, and he should be playing. I will continue to say I think that Trent Forrest has a very limited role in the NBA. It would be shocking to me if somebody with his shot mechanics was ever an elite level three-point shooter. Mm-hmm. I am sure his three-point shot will improve. I am sure his free throws will improve. His highest best use is get into the paint, dunk the ball, and play defense. That's what his deal is. He's a 15-minute-a-night role player in this league. I say the same thing about Udoka Azubuike. Doke is a guy that is athletically limited, and we know what that's like on most of this roster right now. Udoka Azubuike is never going to be a gifted athlete at the center position. He is a plodding, lumbering center. And in my opinion, that doesn't play well in the NBA today. The guy that has tremendous upside right now, as far as bench guys, is Jared Butler. Mm-hmm. And yet, inexplicably, he is not playing. And he has taken terrible shots. He has turned the ball over. I get it. He can play through that. My point is, and the reason I so passionately believe that Quin Snyder needs to commit to developing the young guys, most pointedly Jared Butler, is because the money situation, the draft pick situation, and his topside ability. The projection of Jared Butler, Jake, is why I think you have to commit to going young.
Yeah, well, and I also think that, where you're going with the team says you should go young. I mean, if you really... Because, again, what do we always talk about on the show? And this is what I think people can't forget about. I mean, we're always seemingly talking about on the show, and we're not the only ones saying it now in Salt Lake, that this team is not championship material. They're playoff material. They're second round, maybe even Western Conference Finals material, but they're not NBA Finals material. And so when with that being the case, I just don't understand why this is such a tough, conundrum or issue or choice, really, even. If you know that you're not good enough to win a championship in the front office, then why would Quin Snyder be playing and running the team as if you are? And that's the thing that I'm kind of curious about. I don't even think it's a discussion that you should be playing the young guys. It's not a discussion that Jared Butler should be getting 25 minutes a night right now. It's not a discussion. You're a mid-table team in the Western Conference. Everybody on this team knows that they are not better than the Golden State Warriors. They are not better than the Phoenix Suns. They're just not. And we can all say that about other teams too. I mean, there are a few teams in the league who are better than those two, and I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. So with that being the case, why is it so difficult for Quin Snyder and this front office to get on the same page and say, hey, we should be developing these guys? Again, I always point back to, speaking of the Warriors, how they handled, Kuminga, Wiseman, how they handled the no Draymond, no Clay, run of games, which was, what was that, like 60, 70 games without both of them? And then obviously
now Draymond's still out.
Yeah, now Clay has been out for, obviously he's back, but he had been out for 2 years. Like that was a long window in time, What's the difference between not being NBA Finals worthy because of injury and not being NBA Finals worthy because you just don't have talent on the roster? It doesn't matter why. You're not NBA Finals worthy. So that. take advantage of this time. You know what's coming this summer. You know that big change is coming to this roster this summer. So that's what's so befuddling to me. I don't think that Quinn is doing a bad job. I don't think that, he's some terrible coach. I do think that he's been here going on a decade now, whatever it's been, like 8, 9 seasons, or almost at a decade at this point. And I agree with the people saying that it is time for a change, but that change isn't coming until next season.
Yeah, and I don't know that there really is change to be made with this roster. And this is something, obviously, we've talked about a lot on this show. I think when you look at the roster, the way it's constructed, and you look at, the guys that have the most upside on this team, I think there's no doubt it's Donovan Mitchell. I think when you look at the guys truly who are under contract right now that are going to be here in the long term, right now there's only 3 that I can think of. And that absolutely would be Don, Rudy, and Jared Butler. Those 3, you have to, in my opinion, put every piece of effort you have, every asset you have, you need to deploy that to grow those 3 guys. Because I think they have the most upside. I mean, you look at the rest of the guys in this rotation, I think we all like Eric Paschall. I'd like to see him get more minutes, but I think we know what he is.
Yes.
Right? He's a limited performer.
He has a purpose.
I think absolutely he has a purpose. That's the right way to put that. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I think if you look at guys like Royce O'Neal or Bojan Bogdanovic, you can pick any guy you want, Rudy Gay. These guys are limited dudes. Like, they're at their ceiling already. You know who they are. And frankly, a guy like a Bojan is probably on the way down.
Mm-hmm.
He's not on the way up. There's
Right.
no development there.
Right.
So when you look at the guys that truly have big upside potential, I mean, the unknown in Jared Butler is what should fascinate you. I don't think we even know how good Donovan Mitchell can be when he is fully developed. My opinion, again, is Donovan Mitchell can be the best player in the NBA. If he is fully developed and he reaches his absolute ceiling, which most guys will never do, Don has the ability to be the best player in the NBA.
Mm-hmm.
Go all in on that. Everything you can do to get Donovan Mitchell to that top side.
Yeah.
To reach as much of his potential as possible. I think that's what you have to do. This idea that you're going to continue, and with all due respect to Danuel House, like, hey, man, you're a guy that's been a transient player for a reason. You're on 10 days for a reason. We know you. We've seen this movie before. Right? Mike Conley, we know you. We've seen this movie before.
Right.
Like, we know all of these guys. We don't know what the absolute offensive upside of Rudy Gobert is. We don't know what the absolute total package on Donovan Mitchell is. And we haven't even begun to see even the best part of Jared Butler's game. I mean, he is an unpolished gem who's never going to get polished if you don't put him in the game. So that's why I say you have to go young.
Yeah.
I think the tipping point here is you owe it to these players. You owe it to certainly to these fans to win every game possible.
Yeah.
To go as far as you can go. But I don't think the two are mutually exclusive. I don't think developing and building this team on and off the floor around Donovan Mitchell means you can't win.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a median, like there's a middle ground you have to find. And
Yes.
I mean, again, I know I keep pointing to the Warriors, but they do this seamlessly. They're getting Kuminga. Like Kuminga's role has expanded on that team. And it's only expanded because they've ramped up his minutes. And it's not, when I say they ramped up his minutes, it's not like we're suggesting Jared Butler should go from 5 minutes a night to 30 minutes a night. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, okay, if he's playing 5 minutes right now, let's bump him to 10 minutes. Let's double his minutes, but that's still not a lot of minutes. I mean, that's just not that impactful on the game. Now, I think when you look at the Jared Butler situation and you compare that to, where Donovan Mitchell is at and like his developmental curve, I think that Don was a better player coming into the league than Jared Butler was, right? I think Don's
more ready.
been way ahead of where Jared Butler is when Don was in that same position. So I think it's two different situations. It's two different developmental arcs, but I think the point is that what's, again, I can't say this enough. What's coming this summer. That moves are going to happen. That you're going to remake this team. And so to me, I just would be committed to that. I'm not saying to tank or to intentionally lose games. But what I am saying is it too much to ask to play Jared Butler, 10, maybe 15 minutes a night if you really want to push it? Is that I just don't feel like that's too much to ask. Like I feel like it's convenient to play, Doak and Jared Butler when you have all these injuries, but it's not convenient to play them when the starters and the regulars are healthy. So you don't.
Well, and the hard part is these guys have all shown potential. I mean, Jared Butler, for everything that he hasn't done when COVID hit this team, it's why it like guys like Elijah Hughes, it's so frustrating.
Yes.
Elijah Hughes goes berserk in that one game, hits those threes. Like, you feel like, all right, now we're starting to see what we've all heard and when the Chris Brickley summer tape, and now he's not here.
Pack your shit. Let's go.
The frustrating part is you see Jared Butler in the G League, you see Jared Butler in Summer League, you see Jared,
You see him in the NBA. I mean, he shows
flashes,
Yeah.
right? It's Trent Forrest. Why are we not seeing Trent Forrest improve his three-point shooting? Why are we not seeing offensive development out of Rudy Gobert? I'm not trying to be the master of the obvious, but I think if I'm a talent evaluator, I'm doing everything I can do to get Rudy Gobert to be somebody that can score the ball on his own.
Mm-hmm.
I'm paying the guy $41 million. Where's the development?
Yeah.
That's my biggest question. So when I look at this stuff and everybody tells me, you listen to Bowler and you listen to, you listen to Booner and you listen to all, David Locke will tell you, this team develops the young guys. Where is that?
What's the example?
And it's like you're paying the tax man now. You've made all this money and now you got to pay your taxes and you're not. Where's the profit on guys like Gobert, on Jared Butler, on Dante Exum, on all these guys that have been busts, on the Trey Lyles of the world? Now, granted, you turn those guys into other dudes. You turn Trey Lyles into into Donovan Mitchell, which is great. That's fantastic. That's exactly what you should do and what you need to do.
Yeah.
But at some point, you have to understand that you wasted a generation of draft picks.
Yeah.
And you have nothing to show for that, and you have no draft picks, and you have no young guys who you've developed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I say, to round this out, you got to go all in on Jared Butler. In my opinion, you've got to do everything that you can do to bring him up, because I don't see another guy that's got the growth potential that he's got.
Well, and I just think it's like, why wouldn't you? Why does going in on Jared Butler somehow get spun into a bad thing? I feel like when I see, the fan base or media members or, when I hear people talking about this, they're having the conversation from the standpoint of, well, we either got to win or we got to develop people. It's like, no, dude, you have examples in the league of teams doing both.
Yes.
And I don't know why that's such a...
Not teams. You have examples in the NBA of the elite teams doing both.
Yeah.
Like, you look at Giannis, look at the development of Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look at the jump shot. Look at the mid-range game. This guy was embarrassing from the shooting position.
Yes.
Giannis was embarrassing just 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Last year, he wasn't a good shooter. They win a championship. This year, the guy's freaking elite.
I'm for real.
He's an elite shooter in the mid-range.
Mm-hmm.
How is that not happening at all in this generation of Jazz, in the modern NBA, in the modern Utah Jazz era? Show me where you've had a guy that's completely developed into a star in this league. Where is it? And I'm not talking about Enes Kanter. Enes Kanter sucked when he was here. Enes Kanter sucked when he left, and he's out of the league now as Enes Freedom. I'm not talking about that kind of guy.
Yeah.
Where's the Gordon Hayward topside development? Maybe you got all you could have gotten out of Gordon Hayward. Maybe you got all that you could have gotten out of Trey Burke. Maybe you got all that you could have gotten out of Dante Exum. But have you gotten all you can get out of Rudy Gobert? That's my frustration, is that you're putting Rudy Gobert up as this unbelievable defensive player, but you've done nothing to give him an offensive arsenal.
And teams have figured it out. Teams have figured out how to beat what you have. And that, to me, is what really would be motivating me if I was the Jazz. Hey, the NBA, the rest of the teams in the league know who we are. They know how to beat us. They know, they know
Yeah.
our limitations. They know, how to put us in positions, to not be as successful. And they're only able to put us in those positions because certain players have limitations. So it's not the developmental conversation that I feel like is happening a lot lately. The Jazz are not some elite developmental franchise, and anybody who tells you that, I'm just not sure whether what they're looking at or what examples they would point to. Because again, I'm not going to be the guy who sits here and says that Bowler Jack, doesn't watch Jazz games. Obviously, the guy watches Jazz games. Obviously, the guy has a bit of a biased opinion. But to sit here and say that this is a developmental organization, I think is quite a stretch, even if you're Bowler Jack.
Well, I want to read some, excuse me, YouTube comments from Xavier Pena, amongst others. Yesterday, he said, it's almost embarrassing for you guys hearing these awful Jazz takes. So what you're saying is you want Quin and the Jazz to do the same thing over and over and not build reps trying new things. Super casual.
You're casual.
I said to him, what show are you listening to? We said play the young guys. We said work through Donovan. He said if Quin could, he would trust that. Look back at when Spider ran the second units as a point. He wasn't effective as he was on the wing, and his injuries come when Spider came off the point. No, his injuries came when it doesn't matter where he was, point guard, not point guard, on the ball, not on the ball. He went to the basket, and in the playoffs, he injured his ankle. That's who he was last year. He has changed the way he attacks the basket now. You do not see him in traffic trying to dunk on dudes.
What I think is so funny about that comment is you're calling us casuals for our takes, but then in the same breath, you're saying that the reason Quin doesn't play Donovan at point is because when Don was a young guy, he didn't do well at point. So you're agreeing with us that the Jazz don't develop guys, right? That's what you're saying?
And by the way, he does play him at point. He is your backup point guard right now.
So this is kind of my point in the whole situation, right? Everybody has an opinion on it, but you can't. There's not an obvious guy that you can go to and be like, yes, they took this guy from pretty low to pretty damn good. I would say that Giannis Antetokounmpo's jump shot was basically trash. It was a 2-motion jump shot. It was not controlled. He had no feel of it. And now the guy's hitting the Kobe baseline fade with regularity. That's development, bro. And I know the guy is gifted athletically. I know that he's got, gifts, with his body, like his length and what he's able to do inside that frame. But I'm telling you, no matter what your body is or how athletic you are, if you don't have feel for the basketball in your hand and you're not able to shoot, you're going to struggle in the league. So what did they do? They fixed that, and they did it in under a year. That is incredibly difficult.
It's crazy.
To do.
It's crazy. He also goes on to rant about a bunch of stuff about how there was a Trey Burke, Trey Lyles era. I don't think that was an era of Jazz basketball. He says Booker hasn't even seen consistent playoff young. Neither did Curry. He was a bench-warming BD. What is BD? I don't even know what that means. Steph Curry's never been a bench warmer. Steph Curry was a guy that immediately came in and had an impact. They committed to developing his body right away.
So wait, they gave him minutes as a young guy to let him play.
But Spida was coming off player of the month this season. Last year led the #1 team. Screw the youngsters. He needs 40 minutes. Spida needs 40 minutes, if you ask me, throughout the season. So you're willing to wear Donovan Mitchell out, your best player. And all we've talked about this year, this is what I don't understand about Jazz fans.
Yeah.
All we've talked about this year is making sure that you prioritize health over playoff seeding. Health over playoff seeding. Because if you're healthy in the playoffs, supposedly you can beat anybody. So play him 40 minutes. I just look at these comments and I really don't understand. I think that it is. I think a guy like Caleb on our one of our listeners said a lot will depend on rotation, who's healthy and who's not. I agree with you that Eric Paschall needs about 15 minutes, and depending on how much Mike Conley can provide for the Jazz when it counts will be crucial. So many things will have to go right for this team to win it all.
Facts.
That is a guy who knows basketball, who clearly understands the Jazz.
Yeah.
The last line there, so many things will have to go right. Like Kay Nurin, the Jazz are not a team anymore. Danny just needs to blow it all up. Jesus Christ destroys all big tech Marxism. Says Rudy actually has hit three-pointers quite well in scrimmages and wants to add these to his game. Draymond is nowhere near as great as Rudy on defense. I would beg to differ.
Yeah.
I think Draymond Green is a perennial defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
All the numbers during real time, during games that are part of the matter points per possession, etc., and on the floor has been backed up by David Locke. Okay, hey, look, David Locke works for the team. Do you really think that David Locke would give Draymond Green any accolades at all whatsoever?
And here's the deal.
Come on now.
This is the other. I'm so glad we got a comment about stats. I have a lot of respect for people who formulate opinions off stats because stats are numbers that are put out by players, right? And you can basically make any kind of argument, right? It's the age-old LeBron versus Jordan versus Kobe argument, and you've got stat guy, legacy guy, and guy who only watched Kobe.
Yeah.
And I think when you look at this team and you look at the stats, if you just look at the stat sheet, Rudy Gobert is an MVP. If you just look at the stat sheet, other guys are just MVPs. But it's not just the score box. It's not just the stat sheet. It is the impact you have on the game. And again, I think Draymond is such an interesting example. Yesterday on the show, it got brought up that Draymond's like obsessed with Rudy Gobert. I don't think that Draymond's obsessed with Rudy Gobert. I think Draymond's a Hall of Famer. I think he's won championships, and he knows how to get in your head before you're even in his building.
And the one thing that Draymond clearly does better than Rudy Gobert is unite his team. That team is when it's Dre, Steph, and Clay, Draymond Green's running that team.
Yeah, that's one of the best teams in the league with those three on the floor.
He is not a good three-point shooter, but he can make threes. He's an elite passer. He's an elite distributor. He's an elite rebounder. He's an elite low-block defender, Draymond Green, who can defend essentially 2 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't know. Rudy Gobert is a great player. Why do we have to compare him to Draymond Green? Well, by the way, they're completely different players. You can't give Rudy the ball and say, run up the floor and be our point guard.
Yeah.
I mean, Draymond Green, when that team was setting NBA records and being elite, Draymond Green was running point for them.
Yeah.
They're two different players. Have enough respect for Rudy Gobert that you don't need to compare him to every other center in the league.
Yeah.
Rudy Gobert is in a unique situation. He's a unique fit for this team. It's exceptionally rare to be built around a center.
Mm-hmm.
So it is what it is. Let's see. Jeremy Bolton says Draymond is a casual and doesn't even watch Jazz games. I would agree with that.
He's casual.
He's a casual.
Yeah. Yep.
Mexi says Quin's stubbornness not playing the young guys is a joke. Butler's a stud and should be Conley's backup. I don't disagree with that.
Keep it real.
Yeah, Mexi, I don't know that I'd call him a stud yet, but his upside is incredible. Ethan says Jared Butler is neither given minutes nor waived. Yeah. If you're not going to play Jared Butler up here, you don't practice enough to keep him up. Right? You don't. Now, during the All-Star break, you would hope that, the guys who aren't All-Stars, that you're working out together, there's value in that. But if you're not going to play him, 10, 12, 15 minutes a night, I don't know why he's up here.
Exactly.
I really don't. He needs, and the problem is he goes down to the G League, and what's he do?
Lights it up.
He owns
dominates.
people.
He's a 4A player right now.
Yes.
He is good enough to dominate the G League, but the NBA game is too fast for him. And so he's got to play minutes
Totally
so it
agree.
slows down for him.
Tanner Plummer says if the Jazz don't develop their young guys, they'll be mediocre bad after Don, Rudy, and Conley are done playing.
Hey, guys.
Yeah. Jared Butler says Draymond is a casual and doesn't even watch Jazz games. It's so good I read it twice.
You're casual.
The next shirt should say, you should say something positive about the Jazz. Seriously, Tanner. The Beast says, good morning, you called. No, I'm not. No, I'm not. I'm not. No.
No, I don't,
I'm not. Jeremy, let's see. Tanner says, if Quinn gets canned next season, who would you replace him with? Jeremy replied to that by saying, I swear if I hear Sam Cassell's name come up, I'm going to punch myself in the face. video or it didn't happen. Jeremy Bolton says the Jazz should hire the Jimmer, the Jimmer. Thank you.
Wow.
To be Rudy's shooting coach. Giggity, what's up with you? The Rocket Man says, how would you compare where the Suns are to where the Jazz are? I feel like they're and then I don't know what you said because your comment got filtered. I feel like where the Jazz are is the Suns have passed the Jazz. The Suns were this really terrible organization, didn't spend money, didn't bring in free agents, didn't draft well, nothing.
Yeah.
Like they were just playing out the string until Devin Booker went to the Lakers.
Yeah.
And then they got this arena deal done and a practice facility deal done. And there was a sex scandal and an HR scandal. And
for real.
then they went out and got Monty Williams and they went out and got Chris Paul and they went out and got JaVale and they got
Crowder.
all these guys who have played hugely important minutes in hugely important games. And they go to the Western Conference Finals and win. They go to the NBA Finals and lose. And all of a sudden, they're the best team in the NBA this year because all that experience helped develop their young guys.
Imagine that.
And now guys like, Mikal Bridges is a stud. He's an absolute stud. He's one of the best players at his position in the NBA.
Yeah.
You look at a guy in Cam Johnson turning into an elite shooter, and now he's attacking the basket. I look at DeAndre Ayton, and he's a stud. And you know what they all have in common? They're all on rookie deals. They're all young guys. They drafted well. They suffered. They, developed. And now they're one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NBA.
Yeah, man. Like, that's the process.
And they have, and you know what the difference is? They have a guy in Monty Williams as their head coach who not only has the best first name ever in Monty,
right,
but he's also one of the best developmental teaching coaches in the NBA.
Here's the game plan.
He relates to young black men in the NBA.
Yeah.
Right? He is a well-respected head coach. And I think he's doing it right because he's got a young, well-respected general manager who has been able to compartmentalize Bobby Sarver. What a shitbag that guy is. They've been able to compartmentalize him and keep him away. And it's really been James Jones, his operations team, and Monty Williams taking a roster that was rudderless and developing it. And you look at Devin Booker's game and you look at the way that Devin's grown his game over the last 3 seasons, and you start to understand that this is not accidental. Like Chris Paul showed up and Devin Booker turned into an elite mid-range player.
Wet like on book.
That's, to me, Chris Paul is what this Jazz team needs.
Mm-hmm.
You need a veteran that's well-respected that Donovan Mitchell will listen to.
And that's not Mike Conley.
It's not Mike Conley. It is clearly not Mike Conley.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's a really interesting point. Anyway, BB says, it's sad I should not be wanting guys like Royce and Clarkson to get injured just to see the young guys. Well, I agree with you. You should stop it and get injured.
And it's sad. That's what it takes.
Well, and it shouldn't. I mean, Jordan Clarkson is a really valuable guy, either in trade or what he gives you. I just think that Quinn has to overuse Jordan Clarkson because where else is he going to go?
Well, I think that Quinn is somebody who, I mean, you love the guy, right? But at the same time, he's been a bit stubborn in this whole thing. I mean, I understand you don't have endless options off the bench, but you're fighting. You're basically fighting to hold off the future. Tomorrow is here right now. The transition process is here. And again, I think, again, I have the luxury of not being a Jazz fan and not have, I didn't grow up in Utah and I don't have some allegiance to the team and I don't view everything like in an emotional way. I look at this team and I say it's great that this team, can make a playoff run and can win a series and then get knocked out in the second round. That's great, but we've been there before. Again, I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative or frankly be like an asshole about it. I'm not. But when you look at this team, like if I was coaching this team, I would go to Zanuck and Ainge and I would say, hey, here's what I think we all agree that we're a couple guys short here of an NBA Finals appearance, which is all that, that's our expectation.
To me, that's all that matters.
Like, so why would we not start working in? Because again, I think everybody thinks it's this huge shift from playing all the starters to just playing all the young guys. That's not what it is. It's not this drastic thing. It's simply just working these guys into the game for 5 to 7 minute runs.
It's better seasoning in the soup. Man.
Yeah, dude.
That's all it is. I
man.
mean, and I Eric DeVera says the initial reason Butler was drafted was the idea that he would be Conley's backup, so Conley can load manage games.
Yes.
And be the white side for Gobert should the playoffs come.
Yes.
But Jared Butler isn't getting those minutes. And I don't understand that because I actually agree with you. I think Jared Butler was drafted, and we all celebrated so hard when Jared Butler was drafted because it was the exact right guy.
Yes.
Until you haven't developed him or played him almost at all. It's head shaking. Good morning, Teddy Wayman. Good morning, Forrest G. The Blind Swordsman DS says, Eric, then why is he not getting more minutes? No idea. Monty Jimmered again. Well, I didn't say I would never say Jimmer again. I said that particular. I can't even remember what we were talking about with the JIMMER, but
I don't know either.
You know.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, good talk.
It is what it is. Why do I don't know. That's an interesting question. Eric and Raleigh says Jazz need to burn it down. Wow. I agree with that. We'll see. I don't necessarily know that burn it down. I think it depends on how you do that.
Yeah, again, everybody just wants to go to pour a bunch of gas on this thing and light it on fire. That's not always the best approach, man.
My feeling is I mean, legit, I would trade everybody that's not named Donovan Mitchell. I would. I mean, and I think, again, all of this to say I would replace Quin Snyder over the summer. I don't know who that is. Yeah. I don't know who's going to be available.
Well, and I don't think they know who it is. I think what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, let's bring talent in. And then, well, you could go one of two ways, I guess. You could hire a head coach first and then bring talent in that fits that system. Or you can go the other way. It's probably a situation where they'd bring in a coach first, honestly, because that kind of opens up some options. But I think it's too soon to be having the who's going to replace Quin Snyder conversation. But I don't think it's too soon to be saying that this is probably his last season.
Yeah, I don't think that's too soon. I mean, I think when you look at the young guys, I mean, I don't know what you do. I mean, obviously, you know, the bigger names are going to be, I mean, Jaron Collins is one of the hotter names in the coaching circles, right? I think if you're going to replace Quin Snyder, you have to hire somebody that Donovan would view favorably. I would absolutely do my level best to find a young black coach to lead this team.
Monty Williams.
A Monty Williams style coach. Absolutely, I would. I think that is really incredibly important.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can't, but then again, I think that's what Portland tried to do with Chauncey Billups. And I think that was a shit show.
Big mistake.
That was a disaster.
Big mistake.
So I don't know what the right thing to do with that is. You know, I look at some of the guys around the league. I look at the JB Bickerstaffs or the Steven Silases of the league. I don't think that works here. I look at Tyronn Lue. I look at Monty Williams, Doc Rivers. You know, I mean, I'm not that interested in anybody but Monty Williams in that group. Dwayne Casey in Detroit's an interesting guy. But I don't know who that would be because I don't know who's going to be available.
Yeah.
I would love to say a guy like a Nate McMillan, but Nate's not going to be available. You know, I just
who's available? It's a great question.
Ask me when they fire him. You know, because again, I'd also say is Steve Kerr a guy that you would look at? Yes, it is.
Yes.
That's a guy, and I would also say that I look at former players exceptionally important. A guy like J.J. Redick needs to be an assistant coach in this league if he wants to be.
The ball's on him.
Well, yeah, I mean that's something that you're absolutely going to look at. You know, I don't know, man. I look at guys who win. That's why Chauncey Billups was such an attractive candidate.
Yes.
Outside of his sexual assault settlement. Because he's a championship caliber player. He was one of the best point guards of his generation.
Yep.
So you want Steve Nash as your head coach.
You know when because as players, when he tells you something, he's been there and he's done that.
Yeah.
I mean, performance in your, being a head coach. There's only one of two paths, and this is as old as time, right? I mean, there's path A would be, hey, I was this dominant player. I was a LeBron James caliber player. I won a ton of titles. You know what I did. Do it the way I'm telling you to do it because it works. There's that path. Then you have path B where it's like you never played ever, but you've been a coach for decades. You've been part of winning organizations. You were the reason that, like Bill Belichick was the reason early in his days great defenses were formed. Or like, you know what I mean?
Yes.
So you have the kudos that way, the respect that way. And I just think that this is a really important time. Let's be honest. Like, this is a really important time for this organization. You're seeing the clock ticking and coming to the end of time with this current roster. And I think it kind of scares some people. I think people are very unsure about what's coming. I think people are very apprehensive about the moves that this front office is going to make. Because let's be honest, as we were just talking about, when they drafted Jared Butler, everyone was like, okay, this front office has their stuff together. They're making pragmatic moves, and we're going to move in the right direction. But now the execution on that has been pretty bad without playing Jared. So now I think a lot of people are like, well, since they didn't execute on that, what's going to happen this summer? They've lost some faith. So I think, and the trade deadline, frankly, didn't help. That was not a great deal at the trade deadline.
No.
So I think this summer is important for a myriad of reasons, not just revamping the roster, but I think it's important that this front office proves itself and that Ryan Smith proves that he is willing to do anything it takes to win a championship.
Yeah, and I don't know that I'm willing to go back on a guy like a Jeff Van Gundy, a Mark Jackson.
Yeah.
Somebody like that. Like Udoka, I don't think has done a great job in Boston. Darvin Ham, who's the lead assistant in Milwaukee, is probably the next young head coach to get a job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Does that work? I don't think it probably does. So when you say, hey, Sam Cassell, I don't know. Sam's never been a head coach.
Yeah.
Like he clearly he was a winner, but I want the best available coach. I wish there was a guy that was the total package. You're probably going to have to take a risk on a guy.
Total package.
I don't. Doc Rivers won a championship with Danny in Boston, and then they hired Brad Stevens, and they haven't won anything.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of risk in making a coaching hire. I do. I just don't know what that looks like.
Yeah.
If I'm the Jazz, and I know that my superstar player in Donovan Mitchell values, values community initiatives. He's a young, proud black man. I'm probably hiring the best young black coach I can get my hands on.
Yeah.
Because that's who he's going. My guess is, I don't know, and I'm not saying Donovan wouldn't listen to a white coach, but the way this league is trending now, you either need to be a superstar player like Steve Nash, who I think's done a fine job in Brooklyn.
He has, and he's at the respect of that team.
I look at, I look at Tibbs with the Knicks. It's a disaster now.
But I think
I'm not
you're
hiring
right.
a veteran
There's
coach.
like this generation of veteran coaches that are available that like everybody kind of knows and who've
Yeah.
kind of like been around the block. And then you've got Buddy in Boston. You've got you still is Vanderpool still with Portland or did he leave? Like I don't know where he's at right now. Like you have some options, but I think you just need to get through the rest of the season, get through the next 25 or 4 games, whatever it is left, and then kind of make your bed.
Yeah, and I think, by the way, you have a head coach now, and you have a really good head coach. I think Quin Snyder's done a really good job for this team. So, Juan Baracco says, do you think that knowing the Jazz are blowing everything up in the summer would motivate the players for the? I don't. I don't. Because I don't necessarily believe that the Jazz will blow it up in the summer. I think that they will make significant roster changes.
Yeah.
That's what I've been told. They tried to do that at the deadline. They were not able because they don't have the assets or the cap space.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have to do that in the offseason. And I think everybody recognizes around the league and in this organization, frankly, that they don't have the talent on the roster to win at a high level in this league.
I would not be shocked. And again, this is just my opinion. This isn't like information or anything, but I wouldn't be shocked if one of the first major rumors you hear heading into the summer is Rudy Gobert. I think that there's a lot of people around the league who who would have interest in Rudy, but it's got to be the right kind of deal because the Jazz don't have assets. So the Jazz are definitely going to have to take a beating on that to move him.
And I think what you found out at the trade deadline is that the Jazz are open to conversations, but I think they realize that Rudy's value is very, very mediocre.
Yeah.
He does not have high value around the league. I mean, if you look at what we know about that situation, and that is that the Jazz spoke to 3 Eastern Conference teams, that, you look at what Rudy's value is, I think people believe he's at his upside right now. I think people believe that Rudy Gobert's development is complete and that this is who this guy is. And it's very difficult if you look at historically centers who don't give you much offense.
Mm-hmm.
Andre Drummond is a good example, or, pick the guy you want to point to. You have to have 2 other elite players around him, and that's very difficult to afford in today's NBA economics.
Yeah, I mean, Rudy's 29. Like, are we all on the same page with that? Like, he's not 25 anymore.
Yeah, his developmental years are likely behind him. I mean, that's why, everybody gets all upset when I say you got to go all in on Don. Donovan Mitchell is a young star player in this league who's not in his prime yet.
Yeah.
He is on the precipice. He's at the doorstep of his prime. He's not in his prime yet. So you have a lot more longevity and you have a lot higher ceiling with a guy like Donovan Mitchell than you do with Rudy Gobert. And Rudy's limitations offensively and the money he's making, it's a natural way to quickly flip your roster. So the outrage that goes with trading Rudy Gobert is just not well thought out.
Yeah.
Brandon Whiteside, good morning to you. He says, you two are hilarious. All doom and gloom. Everyone needs to go. Well, I haven't said everyone needs to go.
What's funny is, and I don't even need to hear the rest of the comment because I know what you're going to say. It's something around, Rudy's really good and you guys don't value Rudy. And that's what you always say. And I think that
we're 4th in the West, first last year, 2-3 All-Stars. You don't have 2 or 3 All-Stars.
Yeah, you don't.
You don't. You have 2 legitimate All-Stars in Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. That's it.
Yeah, let's not exaggerate.
You don't have 3 All-Stars. You don't have 3 All-Stars. Only one team can win. Don ain't winning a chip better than here with Quin. I'm telling you now, if depending on where he would go, if Donovan goes to the Knicks, which is what everybody says, the Knicks are a dysfunctional train wreck. He's not winning a championship with the Knicks. But if he's not going to win a championship, he's going to go play on a team he's passionate about. And that's up to him. By the way, I don't think he's ever said that he's going to the Knicks. I don't believe that. I think that was a summation of his thought by somebody else. I don't think Donovan Mitchell's ever said, I want to be traded to the Knicks. I know for a fact that Donovan Mitchell's not demanded a trade from the Jazz.
Yeah.
I think that's all a bunch of hyperbole and bullshit, frankly. I think what Donovan Mitchell has said, from what I've been told in sources at the Jazz, essentially confirmed it word for word. Donovan said, I want to win championships, more than one. And if we're not headed in that direction here, I'm going to go somewhere else. Period. And if you're unhappy that your players are saying that, it's a you problem.
Yes.
If you don't want your players telling you, hey, if we're not going to win a championship and if we're not competing for a championship and if we're not moving in a championship direction, Devin Booker said, I'm going to go play somewhere else likely. Devin Booker, this is what pisses people off. The comparison Devin Booker and Donovan Mitchell. Devin Booker essentially said without saying, if we're not winning championships, I'm going to the Lakers.
Yeah.
Devin Booker never said I'm going to the Lakers. Devin Booker never demanded a trade. But the message was sent loud and clear. Devin Booker was going to leave if the Suns didn't take drastic action. So what did the Suns do? They took drastic action.
Yeah.
And they remade the roster completely. They had a great draft. They hired James Jones. He had a great draft period. They went and got Chris Paul. They went and got veterans who understand how to win. Jay Crowder is a great example, Jazz fans.
Yeah.
And they built a contender that's developed, come together under Monty Williams, and now they're the best team in the NBA.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen with a limited offensive skill set of guys who can't defend. So when we say, oh, blow everything, yeah, you need to make significant change on the roster. You don't have depth. You don't have youth. You don't play your youth. So, I mean, you can say what you want to say, but you're completely wrong, Brandon, with all due respect. I mean, I like you. I appreciate that you're here, but you consistently show up and say, well, we're 4th in the West and we were 1st last year. What's the big deal?
Who cares about last year? Who cares?
The problem is last year matters to the extent that you had the best record in the NBA and you still went out in the 2nd round because that's exactly who you are. And everybody's like, well, if we were healthy, nobody was healthy last year. Not coming out of COVID, nobody was healthy. What if the Brooklyn Nets had been healthy? Well, I don't know because they weren't, so they didn't. Like it is what it is. You're married to a guy in Mike Conley who's never healthy. You went and got a guy in Rudy Gay who hasn't been healthy. You keep making the same mistake over and over again. So you're going to have to suffer through some really bad times.
Call it doom and gloom if you want, bro. But again, don't come here and expect like some sugar-coated take. Like we're looking at the team and we're saying, okay, this is what it is. And by the way, what's really funny, and I think this should be pointed out, not that we really try to stay away from like the we told you so thing and we're right and all that stuff, but I think it's really funny that now, after we've been saying it for 2 years, everybody in the media is starting to come around to the idea that Rudy Gobert is not sliced bread, and Rudy Gobert isn't the guy that's going to take you to the NBA Finals with Donovan Mitchell. And it's funny how all this is playing out now. You can see why is it categorized as doom and gloom on this show to say this is a 2nd round team? It's a 2nd round team. The roster didn't change from last year. So what would change this year? Okay, well, have they developed it all? Has there been a coaching change? Have they
ever won a championship so you can be satisfied with a 2nd round entry or exit?
No.
They've never won a championship.
So,
Almendi Mustafik says, I agree with you on a lot of stuff, but I disagree we'd never develop young talent. I think the Jazz get the best out of players. Name me a player that left Utah and was much better.
yeah.
Well, I think you're exactly right on that. But I also think that they have not seen top end out of guys. And when you have had as many draft picks as the Jazz have had, I mean, you would think you would strike gold with just one of them. And Donovan Mitchell's probably that guy.
Yeah.
Like right now, of the guys that yes, I understand they drafted and traded. I don't care. He was on the team. He's been in the NBA, and he's always been a Jazz man. He's probably that guy. But what I point to with Don is where has his development come from? Well, it's come from Chris Brickley's gym. That's where it's come from. So I think it's a two-way street. Medin, I think you're right to a certain extent in that I can't think of a guy who's left the Jazz and gone on to superstardom. Honestly, just sitting here, the Gordons of the world, the Ennis Freedoms of the world,
Darren Williams had a nice run.
Darren Williams, his best days were in a Jazz uniform, I think. Just thinking about guys who have come and gone here, the Trey Lyles, the Trey Burks.
But hold on. But either way, I mean, we can go down the track record of guys, and I'm with you. Like, I don't necessarily think that that's a terrible take. Hey, the Jazz seem to get the best out of players, but right now we're in this moment in time, and this is all that matters. I don't care about the past or all these guys before. You're at a point where you're in the playoffs every year and you're not good enough to win a championship. That is the worst spot to be in sports, and call it doom and gloom if you want, but it's the truth.
Yeah.
You are good enough to be relevant and be in the postseason, but you can't get over the hill. Whether it's in the bubble or whether it's in the last year, whatever, and I can't get down with folks from the fan base who are like, oh well, you guys just hate the Jazz. I can't tell you the number of people who have come on this show in the comments section for the first time and said, you guys just hate the Jazz. Well, then they start listening, and all of a sudden we don't hate the Jazz anymore. Because it's the correct stance. It's the situation of the team, dude.
I don't think winning in sports is the rocket science people make it out to be.
Yeah.
The biggest mistakes that this team have made is they wasted draft assets. You should have, again, I just plainly point to Devin Booker. Devin Booker should be on the Utah Jazz. He should not be a Phoenix Sun. It's mistakes like Dante Exum, Trey Lyles. It's guys like and yes, I know you turn Trey Lyles into Don. We get it. It's mistakes like Rodney Hood.
Yeah.
It's guys that you consistently busted on. You didn't turn Gordon Hayward into anything. You let him walk away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's a dick. He's the worst person in the world. Gordon Hayward's a scumbag. We get it. You still made a huge mistake in letting him walk away for no compensation. And why did it happen? Because you let him get into restricted free agency and go find out that he's a sex machine that a lot of people wanted to sign to a contract.
He's a brilliant guy.
Should have signed and traded him or traded him.
Yeah.
But you let him walk away. Like this team, and I know we always get crushed when we say this. Dennis Lindsey's incompetence and his stewardship of this team was terrible. They sold cars. They didn't win games.
Facts.
And I'm telling you now, it's going to take you years to unwind that stuff. That doesn't mean you can't win while you're unwinding it. But what it means is you can't care what other people think, including the fan base.
Yeah.
You can't care what the fans think because the fans aren't the ones signing the checks, and most fans don't have any idea how to win.
Yeah.
You want to win on this team? Replace Quin Snyder. Essentially change just about every rock-solid guy on this roster. You need to change your top 8 guys with the exception of Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah.
And you need to get your financial house in order while you're doing it. And the quickest way to fix your money, because your money, you're absolutely foobarred on the salary cap. You're in the luxury tax. The Joe Ingles move that everybody's so upset, I can't believe he put on a Blazers uniform. It wasn't up to him. You saved what? $11 million in luxury tax? Yeah, go ahead and hang on to him because he's a nice guy, or pay $11 million.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
Like, you have to make these moves, and you don't have to like it. Well, what you do is you have to subscribe, and you have to give us a thumbs up right now.
Keep it real.
I'm keeping it real.
Wow.
Chappelle show's amazing.
Woo!
It's remarkable to me that Jazz fans get so emotional, and you can't think through pragmatically what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get more draft picks. You have no draft picks, none. You traded 2 away for somebody to take an expiring contract.
Wild.
And by the way, where's Alexander Walker, and how come he's not playing more? And I don't want to hear he's got to learn the system. Tell him to dribble the ball up. Tell him to dribble the ball up and pass it to Donovan Mitchell and then run through the paint.
Sorry if you're offended by that.
Go stand in the corner. And when it comes to you, shoot a 3. Shoot a 3. Like, I would play him more. I would downsize Royce O'Neal significantly. Because what are we getting out of him besides turnovers? Cut his minutes. Like, you want to be pragmatists? You want to know how to fix this team right now? Play Royce O'Neal less. Play Trent Forrest more. Play Eric Paschall more. Play Alexander Walker more. That's how you change things.
Yeah.
You want to downsize and change? Play Jared Butler more. Play Jared Butler more. You can't play him instead of Royce because they play 2 different positions.
Mm-hmm.
Anytime Mike Conley's not in the game, Jared Butler should be in the game.
Yep.
Is it going to cost you a couple of wins? Sure it is. He's probably going to turn the ball over. But when the game's on the line, is Mike Conley going to be in the game? Yes, he is. When you need a shot, a 3, is it Jared Butler or Mike Conley? I'm taking Mike Conley. But that doesn't mean I can't play Jared Butler 15, 20 minutes a night. And I'm going to suffer through that for a couple of weeks until he gets better. Because that kid, every time he bounces the ball in a game of consequence, will get better.
And he's already messing with dudes with his handle. I mean, he's already got talent.
Well, if nothing else, Brandon, you do serve to fire people up. Gavin Dale, real quick before we start ripping Phil Mickelson. Gavin Dale says Gordon was a punk, but everyone knew he was going to Boston a year before it happened. So why didn't you trade him to Boston?
Yeah. Why give him away for free?
Trade him to Boston. Then let him
Why
write.
did they?
Then let him write his stupid little blog and say
Listen,
goodbye.
Why did they trade James Harden? Oh, that's right, because James Harden was going to leave the team.
Do you guys all remember the summer of 2014? The Enes Kanter, Gordon Hayward, Derek Favors restricted free agency shit. Derek Favors was a good, not great player that everybody here was like, oh my God, it's injustice. Ah!
Facts.
You lost your minds over Derek Favors, who was a good, never great player here. I love Derek. Good guy, good community guy, loves good barbecue. Smoking Bones was literally his favorite restaurant in Utah was Smoking Bones
so
Barbecue.
good, dude.
But he was never going to win a championship here. Never. Wasn't going to happen. I got in, and thankfully somebody retweeted a couple of months ago where I said, at the time it was Cantor, let Enes Kanter go, play Rudy Gobert, get the most out of him you can. And all the comments in that tweet were, you're an asshole, you don't know what you're talking about, la, la, la. What did they do? Well, now Rudy Gobert is like an all-star. He's the defensive player of the year multiple times. Like, get rid of this dead weight. Trim the fat. Like, do some sit-ups, chubby. Like, get rid of, like, be a six-pack, man. Fat. You know, anyway. Jeremy Bolton says, Jazz should play Jaren Hall. Boom. Nailed it. Totally
next
agree.
question.
Greg Hawkins, good morning to you, my friend. He says, Jazz fans are emotional because half of us are Zoobs. Oh, wow. There we go. Gavin Dale says, DL had a couple of good moves in getting Rudy and Don, but that's about it. He ended up doing so much damage to this team. Doke instead of Bane, trading too much to get MC, the Favors contract, exactly right.
Yeah.
I said we should have traded Gordon in the comment. You did, but I can't read, so.
Yeah, it's kind of a, you know.
And then there's Phil Mickelson. After you give us a thumbs up and a like here, please. We need to talk about Phil Mickelson.
Yeah.
Because guess what? We're short on time.
Now, this isn't a golf show, right?
Yeah, this isn't
Not
the
a
golf
golf
show. You know.
I don't want to hear people saying, "Why are we talking golf?" We're not talking golf. We're talking.
I actually
international relations.
I like golf. What's wrong?
Well, yeah,
with golf?
I like golf too. But
We're not talking about it on this show.
yeah, I mean, you know, last week we talked about golf and everyone lost their mind.
I
so,
drive a Subaru.
Hey,
Subi Flow.
Hey, you know,
Anyway, Jake
I'm not
drives
really
a
sure what that has to do with anything.
We can
but
be sitting in a restaurant, and my daughter over here will. No,
your
I'm kidding.
daughter.
I'm just playing with you. My guy Jake will be sitting in a restaurant, right, and we'll be talking, and we'll be having nice daddy son talk, you know.
Right.
Dad, what are the birds and the bees? Subi Flow, and like a
It's an
Subi.
erection.
Yeah, he'll be like, "Whoa, Subaru!" You'll like hear it. You can't even see it, and you know what a Subaru sounds like. And Jake will be like, "Oh my god." Oh my God, it's a Subaru. I can smell its sex and its aura.
Hey guys.
I think it's blue, but it's not an STI.
Let's settle this right now.
Next time, pay the money, you little bitch. Get the wing.
Take that, you clap having Jezebel.
Put the wing on the trunk lid. It's a shopping cart. Oh, but that Subaru exhaust. I love you so much. Okay, what were we talking about?
You're casual.